My name's Terrence Nelson, Dean of Transfer, Career, and Special Programs down at Saddleback College. Oversee a few programs, one of which is our incredible Veterans Program. I was selected to moderate, but I talk a little bit more than most moderators, as the panel can attest to. Before we get started, I want to run through some ground rules. One is this gets kind of lively. It's a fun session because it's a conversation, it's a dialogue. But what I need from everyone is to please hold your comments until you have the microphone. The microphone is for the video recording, which will be emailed out and posted online. And if you don't speak into the mic, the audience that isn't here that's watching it will not know what you are saying. So please hold your comment, wave your hand, jump up and down, scream at me, and then I'll get you the microphone to ask your question or make a comment. We had some great dialogue at our session yesterday, but much of it was not caught on the microphone. So that's one piece. The other piece is how many of you attended the session yesterday? Raise your hands. Okay, so only a few repeat customers. So we will be going over some of the same topics, but we can expand a little bit if you have other areas you want to venture off into when it comes to academic planning and compliance with VA standards. Just like I did yesterday, I want to ask how many of you are administrators, managers? Okay, we got a couple. How many are counselors, faculty counselors? Okay, and then how many are certifying officials? How many don't fall into any of those categories? Okay, we do have a few. Which it's I'm glad you folks are here, but there may be some wonky policy items that are a little bit more funneled to the certifying official and counselor, just because of the nature of this topic.
That's why we're
here. Yeah. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to have the panel introduce themselves, and then I have a few stock questions that I'll run through just to stem the conversation, and then we'll let the audience pick up wherever they would like, where the gaps are. So, Colin, if you can start with introductions.
My name's Colin Williams. I am the Veterans Counselor at Saddleback College. I'm a / generalist. My background's in Disabled Student Services, DSPS. I was a U.S. Army tanker from 95 to 99. Went to community colleges, American River College, Sierra College. Graduated from Sac State, and now I'm down at Saddleback in Mission Viejo.
Hi, my name is Emile, and I'm the Veteran Coordinator for Solano Community College. I was not in the military, but I was a military spouse and a military child dependent. I've worked for Solano College for 12 years, 2 years as a registration supervisor, 2.5 as the assistant registrar interim, and then the previous over 7 years is been in the veteran coordinator.
And my name is Emile Vinet. I'm the compliance VA officer for Northern California.
Don't throw things at Emile. He'll fight back. All right, to start, this is similar, and you guys had some great answers yesterday, but I want to bring those themes back for the audience to hear. Can you please speak to, and we'll start with Emile again, best practices that you've seen in terms of counseling of student veterans and dependents using benefits and certifying those students. What do you see as best practices at the California community colleges?
Well, as we spoke about yesterday, best practices is that we have a designated certifying official that's full-time, and that's all they do is take care of veterans and certification, and a designated counselor. We have that. Most time things work great that way. The problems are most times is that when there's someone from financial aid or from some other agency within the school that that help veterans on a part-time basis, we usually don't get good service, and there's a lot of problems, and there's lack of continuity from one person to the next, because sometimes it's not the same person. One person works on Monday, the next person works on Wednesdays. It's like that. So if we have a designated person for both roles, hey, everything works out fine.
And Amy?
I think the best practice is having the designated counselor. Our campus, we have always had a standalone veterans program for over 40 years. which has always had a designated counselor and certifying official. I think that's one of the best practices. You have a great line of communication between the certifying official and the veteran counselor with all the information that's going through, and then also communicating to the rest of your counseling staff of the veteran guidelines to make sure that everybody's understanding of the program.
Yeah, best practices for counselors, first and foremost, would be make it a priority to understand VA policies and how those affect your counseling sessions and your academic planning. If the two are not in concert, and we do know that some of the policies of the VA directly conflict with counseling's idea of student success and course recommendations, we have to make the ed plan be correct for VA auditing purposes, and so that the student isn't taking classes that are not payable on their benefits, and that can be a challenge. So my best practice for counseling, is understand those policies, communicate with your certifying official, attend the WAVES conference each year, so you can understand and be up to date on the changes. The students depend on you for that, and certifying officials, they depend on all of us.
All right, we're gonna blame Kolin with this one because we're gonna take it from the 30,000 foot level and we're gonna zoom right down since he brought up that topic. Understanding policy and training for the counselor, for the certifying official. We know that's vital. So can you speak a little bit to that in terms of the best practices? Maybe all three of you, if you have anything to put into this. Training, how do you train these folks? This is a wonderful forum for that, but what are the other access points to learn how to create a valid educational plan that will ensure the vet gets their benefits?
Well, I'll start off. One of the ways that counselors can be trained very easily on VA rules and regulations is to have the certifying official attend some of your counseling meetings. And when they do that, understand that they are working in the world of the Veterans Administration. Federal guidelines that are very black and white, or I might take that back, but federal guidelines that have to be complied with. And sometimes we know, all the counselors here know that counseling can be very much gray and very much maybe or sort of or wishy-washy or a couple choices here and there. VA is not like that, and the more that you understand and about the policy, the more you can help the veteran, make the appropriate plan. Now, we didn't really get a chance yesterday too much to talk about educational planning and the strategies that counselors should be using when counseling veterans. But if we don't get to it, I just want to say that more is better for veterans. A lot of times they're in a period of self-discovery upon exit from military service, where they need to have some freedom to take some classes that they might be interested in, or explore some occupations that they could be successful with. Now, we know that the VA wants us to follow an educational goal and take the classes only required for that goal, so it's imperative that the veterans have electives that they can use to take some of these classes, like college success, boots to books. At Saddleback, we have a physical therapy class where students can learn about the physical therapy occupations and whether or not they're a good fit. These are all transferable classes, and without electives, the veterans will not be able to take them. So, more is better.
Yeah.
She has a question. You wanna?
Oh, okay.
So, how many of you go through, or have your veterans go through a cohort either to begin or to complete programs?
We don't, but unofficially, when I go through and I'm looking at my veterans and the newer veterans and the students that have been there for a little bit longer that are in the same program, I'll introduce them, because a lot of my vets hang out in the office. They come in, they do their registration there, they go in between classes. So I'll say, hey, I know somebody that you're taking the same kind of program with. Why don't you meet that person? And they end up taking classes together. So it's not really a cohort, but it's something that I'll blend together by knowing the veterans and the programs that they're taking.
Let me follow up with that, because there are some best practices with cohort models. Sierra College, Pasadena City College does an incredible job. We have a representative here from Pasadena City. They do a great job with their cohort bases. But I want to drill down a little deeper in educational planning. You talked about flexibility in education plans, so maybe both Amy and Colin, if you can speak to this. What are the strategies? What do you use? What are the end objectives that you can use to create the most flexibility within an educational plan, so that you can, have some of those cohort-based courses that aren't a major course, not a GE course? How do you get it in there? How do you flex that ability within that policy to make sure it's payable?
Before you start, I'd like to interject this. Title 38 says that veterans that attend two-year schools do not have to declare a major for a year. So he said you need the flexibility for them to take different classes and feel their way around so they can feel comfortable in school. That gives them the leeway to do that, because you can just stick them in anything. They don't have to declare it, and you can put you can put undeclared in VA once, and they can take any classes they want up to a year. Most of the time, we try to steer them toward taking GE classes, so everything, but they have flexibility to take anything they want for up to a year at 2 years.
And to clarify with that, that's up to a year of credits earned.
Right.
So if you give a significant amount and you evaluate that military credit or prior coursework right up front, they could bump out of that year right when they walk in the door at a California community college. Correct? Or no?
No, they can have up to a year attending the school. Those credit don't count.
The prior credit does not count.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Emile brings up a very good point, and one that I struggle with often as a counselor, and that's, really the variance in interpretation of VA policy among schools in California, where, as I've worked at American River College as a counselor in Sacramento, where certifying officials had guidance from the VA that was a specific way on specific policies, and that helped me do my ed plans. And then when I go all the way to Southern California, things change. And I think we all agree that this happens, and it's kind of the nature of the beast. It's interpretation of federal rules and regs. And so you kind of got to roll with the punches. Now, if in Southern California, in our specific region, I produce an ed plan with a major for every student veteran as soon as they walk in our door. They will not get certified for classes without that ed plan and a major. So I have to choose a major, and that's just the way it works down with us. And so typically I'll make sure that these veterans on their initial educational plan have some elective room. And how I do that is, I choose specific majors that don't have lower division prep requirements. And this allows a significant amount of freedom for our veterans. A specific major in Southern California would be public administration at Cal State Fullerton. There's no lower division preparation required for that, so the student gets to take up to the maximum number of units for transfer, 70 units, 60 minimum. There's ways to do that, so you always incorporate that, but on the same hand, you have to educate the veteran on how their benefits are going to be used, the limitation time-wise on their benefits, and that it shouldn't be wasted, but it's a good way that they can take some college success classes if Area E has already been certified with their DD-214. A good way to get some college success stuff that we all as counselors believe that are essential for new students to be successful.
Amy, did you want to comment? Or?
No, he covered it.
Maybe I'm not aware, but I heard a term. Maybe I'm not aware, but I heard a term yesterday called dual goal or dual enrollment. I had never heard that before, so
Dual objectives.
Can you clear that for me?
That's on you.
Panel?
Yes, because we do dual degrees.
Yeah, so again, it's glaringly obvious that each school gets different advice in the way on different VA policies. Okay, we know it's not uniform. Like the Chancellor's office doesn't give us directives on how VA policy works for all of us. We're all independent, and we all get to make our own rules, and we have our own catalogs with their own rules in those catalogs, and so things change. With at my specific institution, and specifically to us, just us, our catalog does not state that students can do dual majors, right? We can't get two majors at a time. Our college says that you can complete one associate's degree, and then you have to do 12 more units before you get your other one. Okay, that's just our college. That's the academic senate, and all that stuff has happened long before I ever got there. So some schools do dual majors for VA ed plans, and everything is good. It's good to go, no problem. Our school, it doesn't work for us. So I use a thing, typically, I use another VA policy, a different regulation that's called dual objectives. Two different things in VA policy. And please, certifying officials and ELR from the VA, please jump in if I'm steering the wrong off the wrong road, because I am a counselor. So I have a lot of information in my brain all the time. So, but I use dual objectives, and dual objectives in the SOC handbook states that a student can pursue two different majors if it leads to one employment goal. For instance, I use this at Saddleback College. Entrepreneurship and kinesiology for folks that want to open up. I deal with a lot of Marine Corps guys that want to do kinesiology and physical fitness, that want to open up their own personal training business. So I'll do entrepreneurship, kinesiology, and that seems to fly no problem. But we did have a question yesterday that had two majors, music and
And flying.
and aviation. Would music and aviation work? Well, shoot, I don't know. I'm not the VA. I'm a counselor. I'm not the VA. I'm not a certified official.
Throw it on the VA and
No.
but the dual objective thing, if it works, it works. You know, I have no problem with it. But and as I said yesterday, email me first.
Yes.
And we'll go over it and see does it fly. According to the laws that were changed last year, all programs, all standard degree programs at your school are approved. So if you can make it work at your school, then it's good for the VA. The VA, when I come to your school to look at your records, the first thing I do is look at your catalog and make sure your catalogs are your rules. And I make sure you're following your rules. One example of that is a person GPA falls below 2.0. What do you do after the first semester? Well, they used to get put on probation, correct? All right. The next semester, they usually, if they don't bring it up, you usually put them on academic dismissal, and then you have to go talk to counselors and work them in. However your school does it, it's in your catalog. Now, when I come to your school, I look at the transcript, and if that's what I see, I make sure you're following your rules. And that's the same thing I do when I look at programs and degrees and all that stuff you have at your school. I make sure that you're following your rules that you give us to look at your school on. So that's all we have. We approve, well, go this way. The state initially approved everything, all right? And then the new law says the stuff that the state approved is going to always be approved from now on. Well, that's a good deal. And we made it simpler. We made things a whole lot faster for getting approvals for different programs. So if you came up with a basket weaving program and your school didn't have it, it's approved like that now. You send it into, you send the form into the people down in San Diego, it's a done deal. Now, if you say you want a basket weaving program with emphasis on being a jazz guitarist, and you wrote it up right, send it in, it should be approved too, because it's a standard degree program, right? And you guys are saying it's good. Now, the only problem you might have is with the chancellor's office. They say, well, that program sucks, or we don't like that. But if it flies to the chancellor's office, hey, it's good enough for the VA, okay? So we have no problem with that. It just has to lead to an occupation.
Now,
And I think when you're, as a counselor, and you're really not sure, if you don't know the VA regulations, talk to your certifying official, because she's the one that has that direct contact with the VA. So if and that's what I'm saying, the communication is huge, so that that person can go back. And for me, I'd go back to Emile, hey, does this make sense? Or I would call Shane in San Diego. And then, okay, then I'd meet with the counselors that we have that do our veteran plans. And one thing that we didn't touch on, is how do you get the veteran information? How do you understand this? It's great stuff for this, but I encourage you to go back to your schools, and I encourage the chancellor's office to encourage the schools to send their counselors to the VA training. The certifying officials go to the WAVES conferences. Kolin, as a counselor, he gets to go to WAVES, but many counselors do not. I encourage that you have your school send you as counselors, because you're going to get that training. You're going to be able to ask the questions that you need to ask while you're at the WAVES conference, because the VA is there.
And if you visit our website, which is,
Waves.
you guys have
Waves.
Western, blah, 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 blah.
Association of Veteran Education Specialists.
Waves.
Okay, yeah. That'll work.
The certifying official got it.
Yeah. But if you go on our website and look at the school resources, you get a bunch of information as well. I don't know if you guys have our website. It's gibill.va.gov.
Yeah. Let me hit on a theme that was prevalent at yesterday's session. It's communication, and just making sure that you go ask, have that dialogue. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. It doesn't mean you don't know how to do your job if you're asking these questions. Everybody has them, so please communicate with the VA. Please communicate between professionals on campus. Counselors, Colin talked to this theme yesterday, but many counselors are afraid of doing educational plans for veterans. They're very fearful of messing it up and having someone lose their benefits. Training gives you that confidence. Please advocate to your administration, or even use your professional development funds, seek out some nonprofit help if you don't have the funding for it, but get yourself out to Waves, even if it's on your own time for your own professional development. But I really encourage that.
It's always
in
in
July.
July, and it's going to be in New Orleans this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's Muskoge's regional office. Muskogee handles 15 states, so it's all the 15 states. So it's Muskogee,
Oklahoma.
Muskogee, Oklahoma.
Like the song.
It's funny, usually when I do briefings, people are like, "Who's that? Where is she at?" No, it's a regional office. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I could just interject, I said this before, but as a counselor, when I have to understand USC transfer policy and transfer to some other out-of-state school for all my general students and all this VA rules and regs, I mean, it's just a ton of stuff. It's a ton of stuff without the VA. I think all counselors would kind of agree to that one. I rely on my certifiers to explain to me some of these policies in the VA that I don't understand. And so it's okay, at least in my opinion, I feel comfortable having certifying officials explain to me how ed plans may need to look for VA compliance issues. I don't take it personally. I don't think they're stepping on my toes. I just take it as training, and we try to work together best we can to get things done for vets.
And I think that works both ways. As a certified official, if you're not really understanding something on the ed plan, just don't assume it's wrong. Go and ask the question for the counselor, because they're going to have a lot of information too.
One of the items Colin spoke to is there's so much information that you're dealing with, and we have an asset in our district, South Orange County Community College District. We have a digital, an online academic planning system that actually loads in from Assist. It feeds from Assist. Students have access as well as the counselor, and it's something that some of those basic clerical things, where did this fit? Was it C1 or C2? When you have a system that loads that for you, he can take that off the memory bank and focus on some other things. So some of the institutions that's moved to some of those digital formats, it really does help because it leaves extra space up in your filing cabinet upstairs. I'd like all of you to maybe speak to, as I asked yesterday, one or two policies that the VA has or that we interpret that the VA has that sometimes are a hindrance to getting those benefits processed. We spoke to a few of those yesterday, but I'd like to bring those back up for this audience. So, Colin, if you could start.
Number one issue for counselors that I hear most often is the inability for recommended coursework to be deemed payable by the VA for benefits. So we know if it's a student veteran, they have to take the classes required for the major. Now, if that student happens to have a disability, right, we say, well, they should have special services classes, or the study skills class, we need to do that. It may not be transferable credit, so maybe that general education pattern to CSU Fullerton doesn't work so well. What do we do then? And counselors get really upset that they can't put in the classes that they believe professionally that lead to student success on those ed plans and have them qualify for benefits. That's the number one thing I hear. And I'll have to come back to me on the second thing. I forgot about the second thing. I'm gonna go.
My first thing was, again, the same thing that Colin has. My other thing, although that this does has a voc rehab component, was that when they did the enhancements for post 9/11, before our veterans could take less units and receive their full pay, well, now they have to take full units to receive all of their pay. And we have many veterans that do have traumatic brain injury and PTS that don't want to seek the help from voc rehab or different services, but take the full load because they need the money, but really they should not be taking the full load, and I feel that they're entitled to that money because it's proven that they do have TBI. I mean, you can look at the CAT scans, but they don't provide any limitation of those that are not seeking the voc rehab services. And I understand voc rehab services does provide assistance for those, but some veterans don't want to go through that program.
Yeah, that's right. and you guys are both right, and it's a problem. It's a problem from time to time that you can't add the classes that you want. And I argue at this point all the time. So I'm on your side, and hey, if everybody keeps complaining, we'll change it. That's the best answer I could give. There's no other answer, and other than changing their major to work within the system until it changes. But the reason why the rules are written so rigid at times and then vague at other times is because today I'm here talking to you guys. Tomorrow I might be talking to the apprenticeship and OJT programs. And then maybe I'm talking to folks at flight schools and maybe truck schools. And so ed plans, how you do your ed plans and how, say, a beauty school would do their ed plans, it's totally different. And a lot of times, a beauty school, they have one program, okay, cosmetology. And their ed plan is a copy of the program that's, the sheet that's in their catalog, the required classes, because that's all they can take. You know, at your school, you have to be specific because they're transferring. They got 3 different education plans, and you know, but that really has nothing to do with the VA. That's your school and how the process. And I know sometimes it seems confusing because it's confusing to me, and I have to keep all this stuff in my head all the time, and it changes all the time. All the time it changes. It changes so much that I can sit here and read a letter to you and pound it, this is it, that's how you have to do it, and go home and it's changed. Or go walk out the door and get a telephone call, we just changed it. We were at a WAVES conference when the post 9/11 GI Bill first started, and Keith Wilson was on the stage giving a presentation. He's the VA director at the time. He stood there and he's giving this matter-of-fact briefing and blah, blah, blah. And then his assistants was giving him notes, and he kept saying, hey, we just changed that. Now, and this is our boss who tells us what to do. And while he was giving us a presentation, he was getting calls from Washington saying, we just changed that. We're going to do it this way now. The last time I went to the WAVES conference, I'm up there giving a presentation about something, and I don't know if you guys know, well, Michael Marks, my boss in Oklahoma, Muskogee, Oklahoma. Everything I said, I say a paragraph, he says, Emile, we just changed that. He took the microphone. So I would say something, he had to correct me. And I'm thinking, why didn't you just give the briefing? And that's how fast things change in the VA. So we try to, as soon as we get information, updated information, the people down in San Diego, because it's not Shane anymore, it's Jackie. Jackie usually sends an email out, but sometimes she'll send something out in the morning and change it in the afternoon, because it's not what the VA says, it's what Washington says. And things change all the time. And it was told to us when we first started that when the post 9/11 GI Bill first started, it was such a big thing that no one really expected it to pass. And then it passed, and then was, oh, God. And then at the beginning, it was proposed that the VA wasn't going to administer it. They're going to have they're going to contract it out. And then everyone complained about that. And then And you guys remember 2009 when they were doing this stuff, everything was changing because we didn't have tuition in this state. We had fees, remember? And then we were going to get zero money because we didn't have the word tuition. And they were going to just let it go like that too, until everybody started complaining, and we got that. So it's a constantly ongoing thing. It's getting faster and faster processing. It's getting faster and faster. Make sure everyone get their benefits, and it's even getting better that you guys have more flexibility at getting things approved at your school, and we'll work the other thing out too with the counselors being able to do their plans. And that's the best I can say right now.
If you're not receiving updates from VA, from the San Diego office, more than likely your certifying official is. So talk to your certifying official so that you can send an email to San Diego to get your name on that listserv. So every time that there's changes or information going out, that you're receiving that as well. And
it's a good thing that each one of you counselors asked to be put on the certified list, so that way you would get everything. You know, you don't have to do the certifying, but you can have your name on the list so you can be a part of it. Yes, ma'am. Wait a minute. Here comes the mic.
Who do we contact to get put on that list? Because I've been trying to get added to the list for like 4 years, and
Okay.
I still haven't
Email
been
me.
able. Okay.
Email me, I'll send you the form. It's a real simple form. You just put your name on it. Everybody put their name on it, sign it, and you send it down, and bam, it's updated.
And your email address?
Oh.
Real slowly.
Yeah.
You know, but what he
For those of you who don't,
Yeah.
my email address is Emile, 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 dot, V as in Victor, INET, Vinet, Emile Vinet, at va.gov. And my name is in the little booklet, if you forget about that. But if you have any problems, something strange, something crazy, you don't know what to do, email me and I'll take care of it. One more thing before I forget, because I forgot yesterday to say this. From time to time, a veteran will come in your office and say, I'm having really financial hardship, and they're about to put me out of my house, and I'm losing this, I'm losing that. Please email me with that, because we have a section set up just for the hardships, and I'll take care of it like that. So send me the name, last four, and a good telephone number, and I'll take care of it.
And that form that he's talking about is the certifying official form, so you're gonna wanna make sure that the certifying official on your campus is aware that you've got the new form and you're updating it. Because I know on some institutions, it's, you know, kind of like, I don't like Kolin, I don't want him on that list. And so that's where the communication comes in, so you need to talk to everybody that's in play, that anybody that has anything to do with VA, you need to make sure that you're talking to everybody and we're going to do this and it's going to be approved. There's not going to be any kinds of problems. And I encourage that anybody, and we always do it on our campus, there's people listed as certifying officials that have nothing to do with it. But just because they're involved in a component of it, it's important for them to be receiving the same information that I'm receiving.
And it doesn't matter the amount of people on the list, because I've gone to some schools and it's like 24 people. And come to think of it, University of Phoenix, everybody who works for the University of Phoenix is on the list. So that's a really thick list. Mm-hmm. So that's how, because somebody could be out. Somebody's got to help out from time to time. So if you can get your name on the list, please do, and you can get all the updates and you know what's going on, as much as I know for the day.
And I'll say, as frequently as the rules and regulations change within the VA and our transfer institutions and our own school, so do my ed plans for veterans. And yeah, that does take some time. Sometimes it takes a lot of time and multiple appointments or follow-ups, but that's what I have to do on my campus to make sure that the veteran is getting the benefits that they earned. And so you got to be responsive to that as a counselor and understand, where they're coming from. I have the conversation frequently with my vets about living in that dual world of two huge bureaucracies and public education and the VA, and how those two things make it difficult and confusing at times for students to understand what they're really doing, and so it takes some time, it takes time to explain to vets how it works and what they need to be doing. Sometimes those are hour-long appointments for new students. I would encourage that.
All right, well, Emile, if I understand what you're saying in general, is that if the colleges would address the issues with the counselors wanting to really either limit the number of hours that a individual veteran may take or substitute some assistive classes, if the college would put that in their rule book, the VA would have no problem with it?
That's how I see it.
That's what I was thinking.
But see, it becomes kind of confusing, because we all understand that word, because if you're approved, if your school's approved for any program, you should be able to put anything you want in there, but it has to be written a certain way. So if you have a problem with that and you see another school, hey, it's working at their school, well, look in their catalog, see how it's written, and write it that way. If you have a problem with, you don't know, it's not, you can't word it right, call the state. Because initially, they were the ones who approved the schools at first. And they're used to doing this kind of stuff. So if you have any problem trying to get something worded just correctly, call the state. They'll tell you how to do it.
And one of the things that came up yesterday, and we will be encouraging the Chancellor's Office with this, is
the SAA. Call the SAA, not just the state. The state approving agency, called the SAA.
I have one thing to add with the catalog. From my understanding, that when you're doing your catalog, you can't make it to veteran specific. It has to be the full general population. And where I've seen, where we feel that a class should be accompanied with an English course, that we've got this remedial class, but it's a course recommendation. The curriculum team has to decide that that is a required part of this course. And that's where many schools are having the difficulty, because the curriculum team does not support. And it's, or if there was something brought up yesterday, this particular instructor requires a lab with a particular course, but it's just that one instructor. So the student can't get credit for that lab because it's just this one instructor that requires it. So it would have to be, something that the curriculum team would have to buy into. And that goes to understanding of the veteran policy.
Communication.
And communication. And that's huge. I mean, my veteran counselor has been on the curriculum team since she's been there for 23 years. And she still has difficulty trying to push things through.
Yeah, I wanted to stress something that came up yesterday, but it's, and I spoke to David Lawrence at the Chancellor's Office. If you don't know, David came on. I know we spoke a little bit about it earlier in other sessions, but we finally have a full-time dedicated staff member at the Chancellor's Office that's going to be working with Veteran Services. So it's exceptional. Mike Deere did a great job, but he was only portionally with Veteran Services. Now David Lawrence will be 100% dedicated. But I spoke to him briefly after our session that we would like to see some of those best practices, the explanation of dual majors, things like that, and have the Chancellor's Office hosted on the site. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go that route for some of these catalog best practices, but some of them, we just haven't considered. We haven't run into those issues. We didn't even know it was a problem. As Colin's using dual objectives, well, a lot of folks here didn't know about that. Didn't know that was an option. So, we're going to suggest that there's some best practices put up there for the Chancellor's side.
Can I ask a question? If, being a counselor, if a non-veteran came in your class and they needed a class or something to help them out because they were disabled and need something, what would you do?
I would add that to their educational plan.
So why isn't that written in the catalog that way for everybody? Because if it was written to catch everybody, then it wouldn't be a big deal. It wouldn't be a specific thing just for veterans, have to tweak this for veterans. If you're written in general for everybody, then it would cover everybody.
Yeah, you know, we've explored that option, putting verbiage in the catalog that allows counselors to recommend coursework for student veterans or classes that were deemed appropriate. And, you know, for us in our area, that didn't fly with the VA. And so now that's where my expertise as a counselor kind of stops, because that really kind of falls with, I advocate, of course, but that's really the discussions that our certifying officials have within the VA and whoever their appropriate person is. So those discussions happen, and it happens, they're the experts really on VA policy. So we explore that, but I do have, you know, I do have some concerns of, you know, why do I have to plan differently for a student veteran when I'm planning for all students to be successful? That's my number one goal as a counselor, to have those folks get degrees and get jobs. That's why I'm a counselor. And so I have a hard time treating veterans differently to make their classes fit for the VA. Just for our policies, you know, it's the thing I struggle with. But you know, it just takes extra work to make that happen at times. And every school is different. And I would love uniformity amongst our system on policies and the way ed plans can be created and not created. I would love to see that, a consensus from the top, the Chancellor's office possibly, with some best practices, as Terrence was mentioning, that help guide us, rather than where everybody's doing our own thing and getting our little bits of information here and there. You know, it makes it tough.
And with that, you know, why not add, because he's already making the adjustments for the other group, I know of a few colleges that had put some verbiage together, and they were going to put it in their catalog stating that counselors have the freedom to add courses to education plans that may not be required, and it was instructed by the VA, if you put that in your catalog, you will not be approved to administer veteran benefits. So that stopped all of us.
I'll look into that.
That's interesting, considering that from what Emile just said, a lot of the things that we do for veterans, we should be saying, well, why aren't we doing that for everybody that has special needs, that sort of thing? And if you did put it in your catalog in such a way that it did address everybody, and these are just good practices to do in general, then maybe from what Emile says is that you wouldn't have some of these problems. That if as long as it applied to everybody, then the VA is not going to have any trouble with you making special exceptions.
See, the problem with the when you write it up is just for veterans, then it sounds this is the craziest thing right here. At one time, it was very, very flexible. You go to school, we have 36 months, and people were just taking the same class over and over. They were going to school to get their money, and they were just taking the same class over and over. So what happened was they used up their benefits, and then they started complaining. There was no structure. Why was I able to take basket weaving 1 over and over again? No one said anything. All right? So then they put structure in it. Now you have to be in an approved program. You have to be seeking a degree. Now, how many times can you change your mind? A gazillion times. But you have to be seeking a degree. And then all these little nuances comes up. Well, for the most part, every time we have an example, it's like almost to the extreme. Because most times you get veterans, they come to your school, they're in and they're out. But this one person comes in, they need this, they need that, they need this. Well, the rules are written for everybody, not for that one person. So then we have to try to tweak it to make it work. And that's why they're constantly changing things. That's why when the new GI Bill first started, you could take more than 6 units and got full-time benefit. And then what changed that? People start taking advantage of the system. They weren't going to school. They were just spending the money. So then the objective is to get people to graduate from school, not to get money. And most of the time when we're talking about you can't give them a class and this and that. We're talking about the veteran getting paid money, not being successful in school, getting paid money. Because when I went to school, if I needed an extra class and I thought that class was important, I took that class. Now, if that semester I was, instead of being full-time, I was 3/4, if that class was really important and the VA wasn't going to pay for it, but I really needed it, I took the class. So what is the objective? To be successful in school or to get veterans money? Because the VA will come back and say to you, it's not to pad their pockets. The benefit is to make them successful so they can go on and get a good job and get a degree. Or get a degree and then get a job, or however it comes. But that's the point, not give them money in their pocket.
But before I move to the next question, I want to throw a softball out to you as well. The out-of-state tuition, the enhancement or GI Bill 2.0 that came forward and struck the VA's ability to pay for out-of-state tuition and fees, and some of the states have tried to modify and work with that. As California, we had an enhancement to our residency policy for veterans, but it's still, we have many vets who may need to be counseled to go to other institutions to be able to have their fees and tuition covered. So, Colin, can you speak to that issue a little bit to educate the group?
I strongly, we have a great vets program at Saddleback College, but sometimes it's the wrong spot for certain veterans. And specifically to Terrence's point, if they're out of state and not California residents, if they are discharged out of California, for instance, Hawaii, and come to California and attend school, they won't have in-state residency for tuition purposes. I know as a counselor with all the schools down in Southern California, private institutions don't have that limitation, and so I frequently work with partners in the private sector, private not-for-profit schools. I want to make that really clear. And I do work with these folks pretty closely. I have been to their Veterans Resource Centers, and I do understand the services they may provide for veterans, and I do not refer to predatory institutions at all. But that's something that counselors should be in tune with. If you have a new veteran that isn't going to qualify for residency tuition, and the VA is not covering that, it's about $2,500 a semester for out-of-state tuition that somebody on the GI Bill would have to pay. The VA is not going to cover that. They may need to take some time off or come back when they have residency, or maybe explore some private opportunities in the private sector. You just got to be in tune with that and understand that. I think it's a travesty that the VA won't pay for $2,500, yet they'll pay $18,600 and something for University of Phoenix coursework or Wyotech or something. But that's the rules and regs at this point. At Waves, if people show up to Waves, especially counselors, we can advocate for these things to the people that make some of these policies.
Do you guys have any other to add?
No, same as his, but our institution is a little bit different. If you separate within a year, even if you did not separate in California, and you get out in Wisconsin and you move to California within that first year, we'll waive the tuition for the year to establish a residency. But our institution is unique because we're right there outside of Travis Air Force Base. We have a campus on Travis Air Force Base. We have since the 70s. So we're a very military-friendly institution, and we always give everybody priority registration if you're a veteran, regardless of when you get out. But I know that there are some institutions that don't have that flexibility. So there's very few veterans that are really out-of-state tuitions. I can think of maybe 5 right now in my institution that are truly out-of-state students, and I give them a deferment. We set up a payment plan throughout the semester to make those payments.
That's a great best practice that Amy just brought up. If you do have veterans that are charged out-of-state tuition, please work with whoever you need to in the bursar's office to set up payment plans for these folks. They are going to get benefits and BAH. They're just not going to get that tuition covered, and they'll pay. Hopefully, set up a payment plan and let them try to work through it that way.
How about we collectively get the state to waive all that? You're a veteran. Why should you have to pay out-of-state fees? You're a veteran. That take care of all that right now.
I can speak to that a little.
I figured you would.
Yeah. There was a significant amount of advocacy, and we have some folks in the crowd as well that were involved with this last year, and where we advocated for a larger window for that residency, it kept getting whittled and whittled and whittled down just because of the appropriations process and the cost associated. Unfortunately, when you add up the amount of money or funds or resources that the federal dollars would come in by retaining these student veterans in the state of California rather than encouraging them to go back to their home state, the return on investment would be really high to keep these students if you're just looking at the economic model, but there was a price tag put with it. So you want to speak a bit?
I'm Ashley from Townsend Public Affairs, and I work on some advocacy for student veteran issues. And I will just say there's a very large push for this idea, and there wasn't the flexibility last year that we might have moving forward with the new legislature and a supermajority in the Assembly and the Senate this year at the state level. And so we might have some flexibility with the governor's focus on this. So it's definitely not time to give up on advocating for that. And I think if we can advocate together statewide and really get some key folks in Sacramento pushing these issues, that we have some traction.
Good answer.
So keep up the fight.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the statement that you made earlier, Emile, about the catalogs. You said that our rules are the catalogs, or the catalogs are our rules. And
is it a good thing you're going to say or something bad?
You can take it whichever way you want. But I think for me at least, I'm finding that there's a lot of assumptions, especially regarding catalogs, because last week I called a school about something in their catalog, and they told me, oh, we don't ever do that, and that's been in the catalog for years, but we've never taken it out. Or, I'm finding a lot of places don't follow what's in their catalog necessarily.
Which schools?
I better I'll take this off.
He's got his pen ready.
And I know we haven't, I know we don't follow some of our policies either. And also there's a lot of things in the catalogs that aren't even included that we do or don't do. So I think just using that as your guideline might not be accurate for what we actually do or don't do. So.
Along that line, Emile, if I've got a catalog and I've got a course, now at our school, Foothill, we are a little rampant with, rather than prerequisites, we put in advisories. Which, now, if you see advisory, is that okay?
The VA likes prerequisites better?
Yeah, but the thing is, you make a prereq, the class might not load, so that's why the faculty like advisories.
Yeah. But see, if it's a prereq, then it has to be approved.
Right.
Because you have to take it before you take the other class. An advisory is like a suggested class you take.
Right.
So, see, it's with crazy words. Yeah. If you saw prereq, the VA said, oh, they have to take it before they do anything else, blah, blah, blah. Advisory, you can, or you don't have to. You see, it's wording.
And Emile, just to kind of educate you from our system standpoint, exactly what you said, if many faculty are afraid of putting any mandates or prerequisites on their courses because they want to make sure they have enough students coming into that section, or else they won't be able to offer the section.
I understand that.
It's the system, two bureaucracies not being able to fit it together with the puzzle piece.
Now we have our computer science department doesn't put prerequisites in a lot of their computer programming coursework because they want professionals that need these classes to go ahead and be able to place in these classes as easily as possible without having to jump through prerequisite hoops. So my students that want to be computer engineers or something at the four-year schools, they have to do, well, some of the four-year schools require a few of our articulated programming courses. Ours are CS 1A, 2A, 3A, that's how the course sequence goes. But some of the four-year universities only want them to do their own, where our articulation is only for 2A, and then 4B is the two courses that will transfer articulate over to whatever college. And so what I do is I change that ed plan so that the student, right, I find another major that requires CS 1A, because they need that class to really be successful and can CS 1B, even though it's not a prerequisite. I will find another major that requires CS 1A, and I will change that ed plan for that semester so that student can be properly prepared for CS 1B. And so, yeah, you know what? It's tough, and I'll be searching this. I search assist all the time to try to figure out who requires a class. It's hard, but that's what I got to do.
Yeah, he has a great boss to help him with that, though.
You have to be, I've run into that category, and like what Emile said, is the student can change their major. They're not locked into it. So say they want to do a particular class, but it doesn't fall into their major. Ran across something with this one student. She's taken Japanese as an associate's degree. She has 2 more classes to get her associates, but she's going to be transferring to a 4-year school. She wants to get a head up and take this one class at the 4-year school, which she can do. Wants me to do a parent school letter to that school, so the VA is going to cover it. Well, there's no way that we're going to be able to work that business class into Japanese. So the suggestion was, when I worked with our counselor, change her major. So that she could change her major because she's not locked into it. And then when she gets to that 4-year school, then she can switch back to whatever. She's going to have to fill out a 1995 anyways, because it's a notice of change of program or place of study, that would be able to work. Am I right, Emile?
Emile?
I would just say that before you change, before I change majors all the time for student veterans, I educate them very specifically on the limitations of the GI Bill and whether or not that's a smart decision. Sometimes, if they're a transfer student in a high unit major like engineering, sometimes they really need to think about saving that extra 4 units for the university that covers where the tuition will be covered. So that's a conversation that you got to have frequently with vets and make them understand that, hey, community college, you may need that BAH, but you know what? Maybe you don't need that full data plan on your iPhone, and you can take 4 or less units and save those for the university. I mean, really, those conversations come up all the time.
Well, that's counseling on financial management as well,
Yeah.
life planning. I think that has to layer in there, as with other sub-student groups. But Emile, did you want to respond to that last item? Or did you hear the whole piece?
I'll speak to you later.
There you go. There's the answer. Not on video.
What Colin says is, if you know that if you're meeting with your veteran and you know that individual is going to be in school for a long time, I encourage taking full time, but only having them certify for the 3/4 time, because it's going to help them when they go to transfer. I encourage that a lot.
Can Amy or Colin, can you speak a little bit to maybe some of the novice counselors that are new to veterans counseling about what yellow ribbon is and what is full yellow ribbon? What is the difference?
Yellow ribbon wouldn't be an issue with your schools because your schools are all.
But this is about counseling a student in their future pathway. Many students choose institutions because they are labeled as yellow ribbon, but there's a difference in the application of that program. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. So in Southern California, there's plenty of private institutions, many of them very reputable, like the Azusa Pacific, Pepperdine, USC. And the Yellow Ribbon program is basically if a student is entitled to 100% of their post 9/11 GI Bill benefits, and the school that they're going to transfer to, their private institution, the tuition is above the maximum that the VA will pay for, which I believe is $18,000 something these days.
$18.77 and 65 cents.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Today.
Yeah.
Today.
The school can opt into the Yellow Ribbon program, and depending on the amount that they're going to contribute to the excess tuition, may or may not cover the entire cost for the student veteran. Now, the difference between a full Yellow Ribbon school and a partial Yellow Ribbon school often gets confused. Schools will say they're Yellow Ribbon, but they're only partial Yellow Ribbon. And what I mean by that is that there's limitations to the amount of money they're going to contribute towards the cost of tuition. USC is a prime example. They're Yellow Ribbon. However, they have limited number of Yellow Ribbon scholarships that they offer. I want to say 5 for some programs. And the tuition, when matched by the VA in excess of $18,000 and some change, doesn't cover the tuition costs. So when private universities are in the discussion, it's really easy to look up on the VA's webpage the list of California Yellow Ribbon schools, and it will tell you the exact number of scholarships and the exact amount of money they're going to contribute towards the excess tuition. So frequently during sessions, if we're talking private universities, we'll get on there and see what the school is going to contribute and whether or not that's going to cover the whole tuition costs. You know, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes the veteran's good with that, and they'll use financial aid, and they'll go on to USC and be extremely successful, and they'll grab some scholarships along the way. We have those discussions too, but a lot of times private institutions that aren't really vet-friendly throw around that yellow ribbon verbiage there pretty liberally and take advantage of students sometimes.
I would disagree with that. I really would, because the Yellow Ribbon program is not set up to take advantage or take advantage of students. It's to help out. Let's use USC. USC is not obligated to give any money to veterans going to school, but they said if veterans come here, based on our population of veterans that attend the school, we would donate X amount of dollars toward their tuition, and we'll give so many. We'll have, you said 5. So we have, if we get 5 veterans come to our school, the first 5 would get $10,000 each. Now, $10,000 going to that school may not be anything, but if a person wants to go to that school, at least they're getting some kind of rebate or a discount, right? But they don't have to give anything. It's a volunteer thing. Some schools say, well, we would help pay the all the unmet charges that the VA won't pay. So if you go to one of my favorite schools, University of San Francisco, it's like $18,000 a semester. Okay, so that means a person can only go to that school for 1 semester. And the next semester, if they're willing to pay half of the tuition, right? Because the VA will only pay half of the unmet charges for the Yellow Ribbon program. So basically, I'll give you an example. I go to University of San Francisco. The tuition is $1,000 or $1,500, and the VA is only going to pay $1,000. So that means that veteran has to pay $500, come out of his pocket with $500. The University of San Francisco says, well, they're a veteran. I tell you what we'll do. We'll pay $250 of the $500. And the VA says, well, if you pay 50% of what the remaining cost is, we'll pay the other 50%. And they will do it, right? Now, sometimes some schools will say, well, you got $500, we'll pay $50 of it. And the VA will pay $50 of it. And then the student's forced to pay the other $400. So it's, are they taking advantage of the student? I would say no, because they didn't have to pay anything extra. If you want to go to that school, you have to pay the cost. If you want to go to Stanford, then God bless you. You know what I'm saying? Because that school is very expensive. So the Yellow Ribbon program is to help veterans out. And as it goes on, if you watch it, it goes up and down. Sometimes the schools, after a while, will pay more money because they're getting more veterans come to the school. So it's cost effective for them to help the veteran out. But if they only get 1s and 2s, they set it aside. Hey, we only get 1s and 2s every now and then. We're going to pay X amount of dollars, and that's how it is. It's not to hurt anybody. It's to help. And sometimes they get more money, sometimes they don't. But as a whole, I would say the Yellow Ribbon program is a great program for all schools, depending on how much money they give. I think if you want to go there and they give you something, they're trying to help you out. They're not obligated to do anything for you.
Yeah, I agree with Emile to make that clear that the Yellow
Don't change,
Ribbon
man.
is a wonderful program, but you have to pay attention to the details with students.
Correct.
We have limited if the student's limited financially, they need to know that up front, not on the back end when they finish their degree and are tabbed with the remaining tuition. So I agree. I love Yellow Ribbon, and schools that are full Yellow Ribbon are given unlimited. Hey, I like those the most. But you got to be You just got to be aware and educate the veteran that not everybody is full yellow ribbon, and there are schools that are yellow ribbon that you may incur some costs, and they just got to know that.
And also, the yellow ribbon is a year contract. So come the end of May or beginning of, or
Yeah.
end of April, beginning of May, the letters go out, so the school has to sign a new contract for the year. So this year they're going to offer this, but the next year they're going to change. And that veteran needs to be aware of that. I also encourage, if it looks like a full yellow ribbon school, and I have seen this with a school in New York, and the veteran, I just said, I really want you to do your research. I want you to go and make sure, talk to this financial aid, and it wasn't just this one school. I'm using this for an example, but it said a full yellow ribbon school, but as they get down, they did a breakdown of the fees, and they said, oh yeah, full ribbon for this, this, and this, but then there's these extra fees. And it's not part of the contract, so you're gonna have to get a loan for the $10,000 each semester to be able to, because it wasn't part of it. It appeared to be a full yellow ribbon school, but there are these other fees.
But that's why
And that's
the
why I say
push
you've
is,
got to make sure that the veteran is doing their research.
but
just
that's why the push
because-
is to go to state schools.
Mhm.
Because we may try to make it affordable for everyone to go to school. Now, if you want to go to a school that's $4,000 per unit, I can't do nothing about that, you know? Now, if you want to, there was a documentary a year and a half ago. This husband and wife, they were in $250,000 in hock for going to school. Neither one of them had a job. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a lot of money. And in America, I always say this, but in America, if my car costs more than yours, my car's better than yours. Even though both of them sit outside in the rain, my car's better than yours. So it's the same thing. If I go to Stanford, I must be better than you. So if I got to go in a hock, I'm going in a hock because I'm going to Stanford. Now, that's not always the case, because if you go to Stanford for basket weaving, you're still not going to find a job. You know, so you have to do research and do the best you can. So the objective is to get a college degree with the funds that you have. Why go into debt if you don't have to?
You know, as a Bruin, I really appreciate your talk about Stanford. Let me go to the next one.
I just want to say something on the yellow ribbon, and also to kind of tell you a success story. And the biggest thing is to tell the student to do their homework, because that's going to make the difference. And our veterans are pretty smart. They're smart cookies when they want to do their homework and they want something. I had one student, when he was transferring, he wanted to go into nursing. He got accepted to USF in the nursing program that he did his transfer on. He did his research, he did his job. He got the yellow ribbon program, he used his BAH benefits. He also got a scholarship, and he got financial aid. He wound up only having to pay like $250 for the end of the year to go to USF in his nursing program. So they're pretty smart but you have to encourage them to do their homework.
And I can second that. We've had veterans in our local community that have transferred on to private institutions and then really advocated to bring the yellow ribbon program to those institutions. Chapman, Vanguard have changed their policies because the student veterans advocated for themselves. We talk about in our yesterday our session, really encourage your student veterans when they see gaps. Maybe we're blind as an institution. We're major big battleships. We're not speedboats that turn on a dime. So we need to be told when there's a gap. We only have a couple more minutes. Do you have any closing comments about these themes? Do you want to add anything else?
I'm just happy no one spoke about VRAP. and
You just open that can of worms.
I
No,
know.
put the hand down.
I thought we were going to make it through.
we only got a couple of minutes, so what difference does it make?
All right, folks. I really want to applaud all of you, as you heard in the session yesterday. I applaud you for attending this week, these few days. We have amazing professionals in our system, and you guys, you show how much we do care about our student veterans, and we're giving up our time to come out here up to the Bay Area. For many of us, traveled pretty far. And, you know, why wouldn't a student veteran want to attend a California community college with these type of folks? So I applaud you. Thank you for what you've done. And panelists, thank you for your time.